Hello, welcome to another edition of Sally's Astrology Book Club. This month I'm talking about the book of Earth by Stephen Forrest. Last month I talked about the Book of Fire. And so this month we're moving from the signs of Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius into the earth signs of Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And Stephen Forrest says that we often tend to throw the word practicality at the earth signs, that it's like very worthy, very dull. And he said earth signs are really anything but. That earth signs, while they do emphasize the practical, at the heart of the journey of earth signs is that seeking of something that is a higher good, something beyond the earthly realm, an ideal that they're struggling to bring into the real. And we start with the sign of Taurus as an example of a sign that we tend to think of as very good, very fixed, very worthy people. They like to eat, they like to drink, they like nice homes, they like to drive nice cars, they're pleasant, a little stubborn. You know, all of these things are sort of superficial descriptions of the Taurus energy. A Taurus, he said, actually is someone who's here to learn to calm down. And so that's why we have this emphasis on Taurus liking very solid things. They love their comforts. They love their garden. They love to be out in nature. They love music, all the Venusian things, since Venus rules Taurus. But Forrest said the goal of all of this is not just simply to enjoy oneself, but that calming down is a way of learning to listen to one's inner voice. Because Taurus, more than anyone, really needs to hear what is speaking to them at the deepest recesses of their being. You know, that beginning of the mission of the earth sign starts with that still small voice that a Taurus must learn in life to hear. And a Taurus does that by learning to simplify, to get rid of a lot of distractions and complications. And so when I was thinking of a Taurus who could exemplify this journey for us, I thought of the beautiful actress Audrey Hepburn. She was born with, as you can see from her chart, she was born with the Sun and Jupiter and the North Node all in Taurus in her fourth house. And her initial journey was of someone who was living that very simple back to earth life. As a child, she lived in the country. She had animals. She loved to play in the woods. She was just a very natural, happy child. And then her world was shattered when she was around 9 years old and her parents divorced. And she is from that Jupiter with her Sun in the fourth house indicates to us there might be some sort of an international issue around Audrey Hepburn. And she did have a mother who was Dutch and a father who was English. So she was kind of pulled back and forth between the parents and sent to a boarding school in England. And she was at first very lonely, you know, pulled out of this sort of Eden that she'd been living in as a child. But then she discovered dance and ballet, and she just threw herself into studying the ballet and perfecting her form. And so the Taurus, again, you know, she didn't have the nature, she didn't have the solid home to nurture her anymore, but she turned to beauty and that physical movement through music, which is dance. She also at that time connected with a family, I think on holidays when she couldn't be with her parents. She was sent to board at a coal miner's home in England, out in the country in England. And she loved being there and she loved the simple people. And she stayed in touch with them for many, many years, even after she had become a world famous actress. But then if you can look at the chart, you can see Pluto was in Cancer when she was born. As Pluto moved into Leo, it began squaring this Taurus, Sun, and Jupiter. And her world was rocked, you know, everyone's world was being rocked during these years of the late 1930s and early 1940s. This was World War II. And she was living in Holland with her mother at that time. Her mother had made the decision to bring her out of England to live with her in Holland, never dreaming that within a couple of years the Nazis would occupy Holland and that they would be living in very dire circumstances. And so throughout these years, Audrey was in her, she was, I think, 11 when the war began. And so until she was 15 or 16, then she was living in war-torn Holland. After a certain point, it was very dangerous to be on the street. She had to be very careful if she was stopped by Nazi soldiers to be very pleasant and very innocent and kind of go on her way. And also, they were very hungry in those years. She was literally starving. She would have some health problems throughout the rest of her life that probably had their roots in her as a very young person, just not having enough to eat. She would go pick dandelions and grasses, and they would make soups and things from them. So very difficult years, but that Taurus, that inner sense that was Audrey, that she found something in those years to be happy about. She looked back and she said, you know, a child is a child is a child. She still found times to play with her friends. She loved her mother. And so in spite of the direness of those years, she found certain moments of joy. And so when the war ended, around the time she was 16, she turned back to ballet. And, you know, that very fixed Taurus energy, she was determined that she was going to become a very successful ballerina. But it was really too late for her. The hunger, the privations of those war years had affected her physical stamina. And so she really was not able to reach that level of strength that a ballerina needed. So she turned to musical theater and she danced on stage. And then, of course, just, you know, how things work out, it was discovered that she had a luminous presence on stage. And then she was picked up for movies, and also she had the same kind of luminous presence on screen. In fact, she created, once she became a movie actress, a new look. You know, women actresses particularly had been very made up in a very artificial way, you know, kind of think Marilyn Monroe, and sort of stuffed into sequin gowns to look very gorgeous and glamorous. And she had a very natural look. She would have a short haircut, almost boyish. She wore loose-fitting clothes, flat shoes. She just had a way of looking like she was just very comfortable in her skin. And even when she dressed up in very like haute couture from designers, she chose very simple lines, very fine fabrics, but a very simple look. And so all of this goes back to that Taurus craving for simplicity, what's very beautiful, but yet uncomplicated. She also, of course, is in a world of theater and music and art still, even though she's not in the ballet. And so she's able to bring a lot of that inner beauty that she had into her screen roles that people just gravitated towards. But, you know, her Taurus journey, remember, the journey of a Taurus is to find that still voice, that inner voice that tells them what they need to be doing in life. And so Audrey, as she became more and more famous as a film actress, just craved having her own family with lots of children. You can see that Sun and Jupiter in her fourth house, that all the accolades the world was heaping on her really left her cold. What she really longed for was a home and children. And so she struggled a long time with that. She had two unsuccessful marriages. Neither husband was particularly interested in settling down to create this dream of a family life that she was interested in. She did have a number of miscarriages. She had one child while she was still a famous actress, but she had to bring the child with her from movie set to movie set. And she really never could settle down. So eventually when she reached 40, she decided it's time. She turned her back on Hollywood in spite of the fact that she was still being offered many lucrative roles. and settled down in Switzerland in a home with a garden. And she was a passionate gardener. And so she was, you can see that Taurus journey. She's finding her way to that simple, very natural life, close to what's essential. She had a second child, eventually found a partner who not only was very kind and shared her values, but he also was Dutch. And so she was able to speak one of her native languages with him. So she found in that haven the peace she was craving as that Taurus, Sun, and Jupiter. But remember, Taurus has this need to calm down and go back to what's simple and basic in order to hear that inner voice, which is telling them about mission and what they need to be doing in the world. And while Audrey would occasionally be pulled into a film role, that really wasn't where her heart was. Her heart was with her family. But as the years went by and her children got a little older, she began to hear that still small voice and answered it. And that was, she was asked to be an ambassador for UNICEF, which is the United Nations organization which supports the health and well-being of children around the world. And it's like everything came together in her life. The difficult experiences she had had as a child in a war when she was hungry. She knew what that was like when Holland was finally liberated, and the soldiers brought chocolate bars, in for the children, and what that was like just to have food again. And so she, for the next 10 years of her life, was a very devoted ambassador. She went around the world, visited refugee camps, leper colonies. She went everywhere she could go to bring that kind of relief to the suffering of children that she just felt in her heart was her mission. And also at that point, she was still a very famous lady, still very sought after for acting roles. So she turned that to good account. And she had many fundraisers and would do public appearances where the money would go to support UNICEF. One of her final projects was a tour of gardens around the world, which brought in her love of gardening. And then that also was a profit that made the profits to that went to UNICEF. And so you can see how her Taurus journey carried her from being a very insecure young person in the world to finding that quiet, finding that peace, in spite of the fact that she was one of the most famous women in the world. And once she found that peace, she was able to find her mission and make an enormous difference in the world. So this is, I think, a beautiful story about the true journey of a Taurus and the potential anyone with Taurus energy has. Calm things down, simplify your life, listen to that still small voice that is in the end going to be the truest thing that you'll experience in your life. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.